Amy Hopper is here today to talk about the Lean Canvas. And Amy Hopper is a program officer at Winrock International. And she's actually the manager of the iFund program. So if you've heard of that or are familiar with that, you'll know that they have a mission to positively impact communities throughout Arkansas and specifically the Delta region. And the program seeks to provide a platform for the creation and launch of high growth companies and to spur economic development and job creation. So you're going to hear from the person who is experienced in doing this work all of the time. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Amy to get us started.
Thank you, Stacy. And thank you all for joining me. I see a couple of familiar faces from the iFund, which is the program that Stacy just mentioned. So this is going to be very familiar to you all, Phil and Mildred, especially you, Mildred, because you just went through this. So if no one answers questions, I expect you two to definitely step up. Very nice to meet all of you. I know it's virtual, but I really appreciate you showing up. I'm excited to present the Lean Canvas to you today. I do need to go into a little bit of a recruiting mode. If you do have an innovative idea and you are located in Arkansas, which I would assume most of you are if you're here at this presentation, you're eligible to submit an application for the upcoming iFund, which is going to launch in March. The application deadline, I believe, is the 27th, and I will send the information to Stacy. And Stacy, if you wouldn't mind getting it out to this group, we're recruiting for that right now. If you are accepted into the program, we take 10 teams or companies at a time, and we match you with a mentor from the industry. And then it's 12 weeks of lean startup instruction, which basically starts with the Lean Canvas. So this would kind of be your first taste of that. So anyway, I just wanted to put that plug out if you are interested. And just, I've been doing this for about 4 years. I work in Arkansas and then also the Mississippi Delta, which is basically everything that touches the Mississippi River from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, all the way down to New Orleans and Louisiana. So thanks for having me. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to keep things pretty casual. I'm going to ask you all to participate, and I'll sit here until you answer questions. So please be willing to unmute and speak up, or feel free to put stuff in the chat. I may just have to have somebody read those questions out loud to me if I'm sharing my screen. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation and my sound. Lean Canvas 101. So if any of you have a business idea, if you're like most entrepreneurs, I know what you're thinking, and it's that everyone on earth will want my product. How could they not? So this is really common for any kind of entrepreneur with an innovative idea. They're excited. They want to go sell their product immediately. But unfortunately, that doesn't always make sense, right? So we all know that starting a business is really risky. And entrepreneurship, I think, is scary for a lot of people. So my first question for you all is, do you know why most startups fail? And I'd like for you all to just unmute and guess, send out answers. And if you know the answer, try to wait for others to answer.
They don't make enough money.
That's right. Can you think like upstream, like why they're not making money?
I think a lot of people base their products off of, they come up with a product that they think is cool before they think of a solution before they think of the problem that they're trying to solve.
That's exactly right. So this is based off a study of 100 startup companies after they failed. A company called CB Insights went and actually interviewed 100 founders and asked them, what happened? Why did you all fail? And 42 of those 100 founders said that there was really no market need. So just like you said, they built something they thought really fit a market need, but it really didn't. Nobody wanted to buy it. And so there's this, it's relatively new within the past decade or so, methodology called Lean Startup methodology that is to fix this problem, right? Let's make sure there's a market need before we go out there and build something that no one wants to buy. And the National Science Foundation started a program called I-Corps, where you go out and actually talk to customers before you ever build a product or a company. And that has sort of infiltrated different programs like the iFund, which now we can offer it to basically anyone who wants to learn the Lean Startup methodology. You don't have to be affiliated with the university like you do for I-Corps. So I want to share kind of a funny video with you that illustrates this problem. You'll have to forgive me, it's a little bit outdated now, but it's still just as funny, and it's Colbert. So I'm going to share my sound.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much. Nation.
Sharing the right screen. Okay. I love sharing that video, and I will say that, Stacy, if you've seen that before, it's because it's recycled from OEI's presentations back in 2016. So
It's funny every time.
All right, resharing my PowerPoint. Also, if you look up Vessel, you can find it on Amazon for very cheap. It didn't go very far. I think you can probably guess why. Okay. Am I showing my full screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Okay. Okay, so the good news is you can avoid a situation like Vessel where you raise a bunch of money from investors and convince them your product is great and then totally tank by starting with the Lean Startup methodology. It's a pretty cool way to start a company because it applies the scientific method to business. So you basically assume everything that I know about my particular business model is a guess, and I'm going to go out there and try to prove these hypotheses that I have. You start engaging your customers pretty much on day one, which doesn't sound very intuitive, but you're not selling to them. You're really just trying to learn if there's a market need, right? We just talked about the number one reason that startups fail is that customers don't care about it. So let's go talk to customers and see if they care about it, right? And then it also, by doing this, you're reducing your risk of failure. You're able to make an educated decision about launching a company. So it's really worth putting that work in the beginning. So the number one rule to Lean Startup methodology is keeping an open mind and keeping a closed mouth. So as you create the Lean Canvas, which is the first step, right? And then you go out and talk to customers, you want to keep an open mind in that this Lean Canvas, which is this one-page business document that you're starting with, is a living document. You want to be open to changing your mind about what your business model looks like because you've heard good data from customers that tells you to change up what you're doing. And I say closed mouth because as you go out and you talk to customers, you really just want to be listening. So typically I tell entrepreneurs that they should really just be talking 5 to 10% of the time. And so that's asking a lot of open-ended questions and jotting notes down, asking follow-up questions like why. Why is always a great question to ask customers. And if you're not hearing no on occasion, something about the way you're asking questions is wrong. Customers are all going to fit at different stages in your product's journey. There are some that want your product yesterday. They've been searching out solutions like yours and just haven't been able to build something as great as what you have. And they're ready to rip it out of your hands, right? That's called your early adopter. There's other people who really need their friends to try it out first. They don't want to be the guinea pig, right? So they're going to say, that's not that big of a problem for me. You know, I'd maybe rate it a 3 out of a 5. And that's when you know that that person's probably going to be later in the game, right? Maybe they'll come along with the majority of people, but they're not going to be the people that buy your product when it's ugly and in its first stage. Like I mentioned, the goal is to change. You want your business model to look different throughout the whole cycle of your business, honestly. It's great to come back to the Lean Canvas as a tool to really level set what your mission is as a company and why you're selling your product, right? There always needs to be a why. And if there isn't, then you know that it's time to innovate or you're going to go out of business, because you always should be listening to customers and fitting their needs. And last but not least, inevitably, there are always founders that continue to think the entire world wants my product. It's the best thing that's ever been made. But really, they need to check their founder bias at the door. And so I have a funny little clip to share with you about that. And I hope it's still relevant. Dumb and Dumber is kind of an older movie, but it's a good one, right? So.
What are my chances?
Oh.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Okay, so there's always going to be people who tell you that your baby's ugly, and you need to be willing to listen to that feedback. All right, so I promise I'm done switching screens and all that jazz. I apologize that I keep switching back and forth. So that was the last video I have. Do we have any questions from the audience before we start jumping in further? Okay. Did you have something, Stacy?
I was just going to say your screen, you might want to change the display settings just one more time.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, good to go? Good. All right. So we typically say that there are 3 requirements to launch a business, an educated business, right? Like you're making a good decision to do this. And the first one is that you want to have a good problem solution fit. And I think this is what you'll spend most of your time on up front, is really determining, is there a market need? And is what I have built the best fit for that market need? Because those 2 need to line up completely. And it's important to remember, I think it was Alex that said this, that technology is not a solution. So we want to make sure that, even if you are starting with a technology that maybe you've developed in the lab, that you are fitting it with a real market need. The second requirement to launch is product market fit. Can you package that solution that you came up with in the first bullet point to really be able to be sold and get it to your customer in a way that fulfills that need that they have or the problem? So can you package it and get it to your customer? So that's really around, distribution and making sure that you have your channels right. Are you able to market to the right people so they know about your product? That's really important to a business model as well. And then the last thing is this model scalable, and can it lead to a sustainable revenue stream so that you can stay in business? That's really important too. So if you're filling a need that's acute for customers, hopefully they're willing to pay for that, and there's enough of a customer base that it can lead to a sustainable business. If you're coming up with a really niche medical device, it may be really needed, but there's not enough of customers to really warrant starting a company and spending all that upfront capital to tool, get all the machinery and get all the equipment to make that medical device. So these are all things that you want to keep in mind. And I know that's a lot, right? That's a lot to think about upfront, but really just focusing on that problem solution fit is that first step. And so the best thing to do is to create a lean canvas. That's always what we recommend to be the first step in considering starting a business. This is what the lean canvas looks like. I have written hypothesis over all of them because I just want to reiterate that everything on here is a guess the first time that you put pen to paper. I think it's a really important tool because it helps you narrow in on what you really want to do, but just remember that, if you're going about it the right way, you should go out and try to prove these hypotheses before you really start anything. This template is a PDF that I have downloaded from a website called leanstack.com. It's just leanstack.com. And it is a great website for you to keep digital copies of your Lean Canvas as it changes. As I said earlier, this is a living, breathing document. So as you make changes, it might be good to go back and say, like, how far have we come? What have we really learned from customers? And are we putting those learnings into new Lean Canvases? So I recommend that. I do think that they have a 30-day trial, and then you have to pay, I think, a small subscription fee. But I think it's a great tool, and you can add team members to your Canvas so you can all edit it at once, and you can share it with people as well. So if you have mentors or investors that you want to look at your Lean Canvas, you can send it their way. So we're going to do a case study, and I know, luckily, since we're all on laptops today, you guys can look up You Choose Lunchbox online. Just Google You Choose Lunchbox. You can go to their website. This is a company that came out of the new venture development class at the University of Arkansas back in 2016. And as you guys are Googling their business model, I'm going to just kind of talk through it just to give you some context, because this is the company that we're going to use as our case study throughout our first Lean Canvas. Creating our first Lean Canvas. You Choose is a company that was started by a few founders. A couple of them had children that were in grade school, and they had to pack their lunch every day. And they found that packing lunch was annoying, and so they wanted to create a company that would allow parents to not have to do that anymore. So they allow kids to pick out their food for the week. They package that food in their own kitchen, and then they drop ship the lunches to the child's school in a special refrigerator that's labeled You Choose Lunchbox. And that way the kid, has had a say in what they're eating. The parents don't have to worry about creating the lunches, and then also they don't, leave them at home. So that's a little bit about You Choose Lunchbox, and we're going to use that business model to fill out the Lean Canvas together. And this is the time when I want you all to unmute and kind of discuss what you think should go in each box of the Lean Canvas for this particular company. And we'll just get started. So the first box, the one that I always think that you should start with, is the problem. It's that one on the top left. And this may be a little bit difficult to see, so I'm just going to read it for you. But it says, list your top 1 to 3 problems. And it does say your top 1 to 3 problems. And I think this is an important nuance, because sometimes I see entrepreneurs list, like, I need money to start this company, I need mentorship. This is really your customer's top 3 problems, okay? And then below it says existing alternatives, and it says list how these problems are solved today. And I have on my second bullet point, I say there are current solutions. I say that in all caps, because sometimes I hear people say, well, there's nothing out there like this today. Like, this is totally new. No one's seen anything like this before. And that might be the case, but there is something that people are doing to fill their need, even if it's not as great as what you have in store for them. They're doing something. And just to give you an example of that, if I had invented QuickBooks, the software, I might say, like, there's nothing out there like this, but in reality, people might be using pen and paper or Excel workbooks, and that might be working great for them. So we really need to uncover what people are doing today. But ways that you can kind of think to yourself, what are my customers' problems? These are some prompts for you. So what do your customers find too costly? This could be at an individual level, or this could be a purchasing manager at a hospital, right? The bottom line is really important to both individuals and companies. So if you're B2C or a B2B business, really thinking through what are customers spending a lot of money or time on, because time is money. How are current solutions underperforming? What are the customer's main difficulties and concerns, and what's keeping them awake at night? And I have a little asterisk here because it says you may have to educate your customer that they have a problem. It's not impossible, but it is a barrier. An example of that would be, you know, if you're a nutrition company and you're trying to reach people in the Mississippi Delta where traditionally there's food deserts, it's going to be tough to get people to eat healthy. You might have to have a really big marketing budget or really strong distribution channels. So it's not impossible, but it's a barrier. So something to just keep in mind. So this is the point where I'd love for you all to kind of talk me through what you think You Choose Lunchbox's customers, what their main problems are. Are you guys there?
You guys can use the chat too.
So if they're busy, it could be a time constraint.
Exactly. So it takes time. Is it to pack lunches?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Ashley, I see your question. Do you mean their current problems or problems prior to startup? So we want to know what problems this business is filling for them. So it would be before they have access to You Choose Lunchbox. What's their problem?
It could be healthy solutions that are available in the market for the type of lunches they want for their kids.
Okay, all right. So Mildred, what would be available today?
You know, I don't know because I never bought prepackaged food for my child. I always made it from scratch.
Wow.
So I would not be able, I'm not the mom that can tell you what's available in the market. I'm the wrong person to ask that question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Did anybody when you were young have a prepackaged meal? I feel like there's one brand in particular.
I think you have somebody on the chat.
Yeah,
saying
we've got
Lunchables
in the comments.
Yes, I totally ate those. So my mom definitely packed me some Lunchables back in the day. Okay, so I see some other questions. Getting the right meal for their kids for school, right? So Ontario, can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, well, I imagine parents are pretty busy early in the morning trying to get ready for work and getting their kids out of bed. And if they can, maybe have an app that they can easily select the right kind of Lunchable or, apple or orange or fruit for their kid, for their Lunchable while they're at school, and they get drop shipped to the kid while they're at school, that'll save them time in the morning to get out of the house a little bit more faster.
Yes, totally agree. So I see that. I see that you put that in the chat. Thank you. Does anybody, so is there anybody else that's a You Choose Lunchbox customer? We've talked kind of about the parents saving time. Anything else?
They in the about like we are parent of picky eaters, so it's like
Yes.
they are like trying to fulfill that part.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's totally right. I think it was Juliet that said that. And Ashley and Stephanie as well. Kids. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And also sometimes the kids just run off and forget the lunch behind.
Totally. Yes, that's very true. Okay. Yeah. I think you guys nailed it. So I'm going to move on. So their problem hypothesis was that most school cafeteria food isn't healthy. It takes too much time to pack lunches in each morning, and then kids don't eat the healthy food in packed lunches. And I think, we can add another one on here, which I don't have, that, the quick lunches like Lunchables aren't necessarily healthy, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to box number 2, and just know that we should have time for you guys to ask questions. And if not, you can feel free to email me afterwards, but I just realized that I'm like halfway through. So I'm going to kind of truck through, but if you have a burning question, please unmute and ask. Okay, so customer segments, we want to know who our target customers are, as well as users, right? So there's a difference here. There's people who pay, there's people who actually use the product. There can be a whole host of different people that you're really targeting as a customer. And then this last, the little box at the bottom says early adopters, and it says list the characteristics of your ideal customers. When I think of early adopters, I'm really thinking of the people who needed this yesterday, right? Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier, why you should hear no, and it's that not every customer is going to be your early adopter. So to take you along this distribution curve, on the left, very small percentage, the tail end, those are the innovators. That's the people starting the business. So the founders of You Choose Lunchbox, they recognized the problem, they innovated around the problem, and they fit into that category. The people who wanted their product yesterday, those are early adopters. Those are the people that they know they can count on to test out the ugly beta product and give them feedback and then continue to remain a customer because they find value in what they have to bring. The early and late majority are the people that need to hear word of mouth. They need, really good targeted marketing to be a customer. And then the laggards are the total naysayers. They've got their way, it works well, and they may eventually become a customer, but it's going to be way down the line, and your product needs to be like perfect before they do that. So this is kind of the life cycle of customers. It's important to know your market size early and estimate it often. So that example I gave about a medical device that fit a really niche need but couldn't support an entire business, that's something that would come out in this kind of market analysis. So this is called a TAM, SAM, SOM model. The outer ring is basically anybody in the world who could buy your product, and this would be, say you had a medical device, it would be every purchasing director in the United States at hospitals of all sizes, right? Serviceable available market might be hospitals with this many beds in this region of the United States. And then serviceable obtainable market, that would be the people that you really think that you can reach with your marketing budget, the hospitals that really fit your niche need. Maybe they've got a strong department in the where your medical device would be used often. That's the kind of market analysis that we need to do. It's hone in on what's the real size of the market. And this will dictate what your financial projections look like. As I mentioned, there's probably more than one important person. So the person using your product, who influences someone to buy your product, someone to recommend your product to another person, the actual decision maker, the economic buyer who's signing off and, actually signing the contract. And then of course the saboteur. I'm sorry to keep going back to the medical device scenario, but say your medical device will save the hospital on labor, and they may not need quite as big of a nursing staff. The nurses might be saboteurs. Always something to keep in mind and be aware of so that you can best position yourself to avoid that saboteur killing your business idea. So now we're going to go back to You Choose Lunchbox, and I want you all to think about who those target customer segments are. And let's actually just hone in on who their early adopter is, right? Who needed this app and lunch delivery service yesterday? Okay, I see something in the chat. All right, working parents. Okay, so why working parents?
I said working parents because they're short on time, and I'm thinking they can't necessarily go to the grocery store even if they want to give their kids healthy options. So there's time on both ends, the store aspect and then the home aspect of creation.
That makes sense. And so it's important to remember, as a startup, they kind of have small operations, right? So they haven't yet reached economies of scale where they're able to make lunches really affordable, right? So let's say these lunches cost $5 to $6 per lunch. What kind of working parents are they going to target?
High-end working parents, like working parents that make a really good income.
Yes, exactly. So they've got disposable income. Is there anything that we need to think about when it comes to their kids and, you know, the kids' demographics or what the household looks like? Health conscious families, that's a great point. So maybe people who have subscribed to health magazines or are part of Facebook groups where they're talking about feeding their kid. Tech savvy families, good. Okay, these are great answers. So I'm going to click through. So I said parents with multiple children in K through 12. I only say that because it seems like it'd be harder to pack multiple lunches than just one, right? And then I too said higher income families, so with a household income above 100,000. And then I said early adopters would be the same as above, but both parents working full-time jobs. I really like the additions of health conscious and tech savvy families. I think that that's honing in even more, and I think we would be able to identify these people pretty quickly just by their habits online. All right, so now we've covered the problem box and the customer segment box, and now we're going to move into the solution. So the solution seems pretty straightforward, right? I think the only thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing right when it comes to solution box is tying every piece of your first product that you're going to put on the market to a core problem that your customers have told you, right? Everything else is a feature. So if your first product should, at least the first iteration of it, should only serve to fill that need that the customers have. And the reason for that is because we want to get something out as quickly as possible. And I think I've already spoiled this slide, but if the feature doesn't solve a core problem, it shouldn't be a part of your first product. And you definitely don't want to let others design your product for you. And what I mean by that is when you go out and do customer discovery and people tell you things like, it'd be really cool if you did this or did that, or maybe you hear one-off problems that your customers have, you don't want to design something to fit everyone because you can't make everyone happy, but you need to make the majority of your early adopters happy with what they're going to receive early on. And you can always revise it, right? You can always have a 6-month plan and a year plan about what you want your product to look like, but quick is key. So I think we already know what You Choose Lunchbox's solution is, so I'm going to skip that part and head right to the unique value proposition. So what it says on this lean canvas is that it's a single, clear, compelling message that states why you are different and worth paying attention to. And then at the bottom, it says your high-level concept. And it says list your X for Y analogy. And it gives an example here that says YouTube is the Flickr for videos. So when I talk about the iFund, if I only have like 10 seconds with someone, maybe an elevator ride, and I want to get them intrigued with what the iFund is, you know, I might say something like, we're kind of like the Shark Tank for the Delta or Arkansas. And that's not exactly what we are, but people know what Shark Tank is, and they might be intrigued to ask me more about what the program is all about. So the value proposition is a little bit, we'll probably spend a lot more time on this particular box on the lean canvas because it's kind of forming a statement, right? So you're bringing 3 lean canvas boxes into one. So you're talking about your customer segment, which we just went over, right? Working parents with full-time jobs, higher income, your solution, and then the problem being alleviated and why you're the best. So I'm going to talk about another iFund. I'm going to give you an example from another iFund company that went through the iFund in 2017 as well. and I'll just read it to you. The AbGrab, a patented Class 1 medical device, allows laparoscopic surgeons to lift the abdominal wall with suction rather than the current damaging and risky methods of towel clips and manual lifting. So this pretty clearly states what my product is. It's a medical device. Who my product's for. It's for laparoscopic surgeons and what it allows them to do. So today they're using really damaging and risky methods of towel clips and manual lifting. Whereas mine, you just suction their abdominal wall up and there's no risk of you accidentally puncturing the wrong organ when you're going in there with your scalpel. So that's how you create a value proposition. Because we are not in person and you all aren't actually writing out value propositions, I'm going to share a couple of value propositions for UChoose with you. UChoose Lunchbox, which is of course a mobile app, allows parents with young children to stop packing lunches in the morning and ensure their kids eat healthy. So you've got the product, you've got the customer segments, and then you've got the problem being alleviated, right? The 2.0 value proposition, which takes into account our other customer segment, which is kids, is that UChoose Lunchbox, a mobile app, allows K through 12 children to stop trading up for a snack pack at lunchtime and getting in trouble for leaving their lunch at home. All right, so we bring value to both these groups in different ways. All right, so but before I start on unfair advantage, do we have any questions so far?
I actually have a question. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Mm-hmm.
So your value proposition 1.0 and 2.0, do these operate simultaneously, or are these different? You know how you talked about the lean canvases being a living document. Is 2.0 the second, go with the second version of your lean canvas, or are these two value propositions operating in tandem concurrently?
Such a good question. I've actually never been asked that before, but I'm glad you asked because I think I'm going to make it part of my presentation. So when you have different customer segments that have different incentives for purchasing your product, you want to make sure that you have captured everything for that customer segment in your lean canvas, whether it be through color coding, like maybe the kids are all in purple and the parents are all in blue, or you can create two different lean canvases, right? Like if you, and I think that would be more of the case with a business model like Uber, where you've got drivers and you've got riders, and you need to make sure that you're catering to both, or the business model will cease to exist, right? So it's totally okay to create two different lean canvases if you've got a double-sided business model. Now, in this particular instance, you know, I would say making sure the kids like the food is important, but in reality, the parents are going to be the ones paying for everything. So it's less important to have, it's less important than it would be for like Uber to make sure everything's working straight. But I do think having it broken down by different customer segments is helpful for you to see, you know, what am I building to cater to this particular customer's needs.
Amy,
Awesome.
wouldn't the parents stop buying the lunch service if the kids are not using it?
Yes, definitely the case. And I think I said that because, you know, your distribution channels, your marketing, they're all going to be kind of lumped into one of like kid friendly, you're taking it to school no matter what. But if you've got like different distribution models and that sort of thing, that's where it gets messy and might be worthy of two lean canvases. But I do think, really think through the incentives for every one of those customer segments that we talk to. Like kids and assistants are users, right? Parents are the decision maker and the economic buyer. Lunchables maybe is the saboteur. If UChoose Lunchbox gets big enough for Lunchables to pay attention to, I think that's a great thing. But just thinking through all the incentives of every single one of those people that could be part of your business model. All right. Okay. Unfair advantage. something that you have that cannot be easily bought or copied. The easiest example of an unfair advantage would be like a patent, right? If you've got a utility patent on something, you've got 20 years to make it happen before other people can start, using your idea or your solution, right? So other examples of unfair advantage would be your first mover. You have exclusive partnerships, you've got trade secrets or patents, like I mentioned. Maybe you have a great network because of your experience in your past jobs, or you've got a great distribution network and your speed is incredible. Maybe it's that you're in a strategic location and you have access to a lot of healthcare systems and then within a 1-hour drive. I don't know. These are all different examples. Often people will have ideas for a business and the unfair advantage might be one of the last things that they fill out because they just don't know what their unfair advantage is yet, and that's okay. So UChoose had a Chobani account executive on the team. So she knew food systems well and packaging and the supply chain. And it also gave her a really good network of mentors. She had a great network of early adopters in Northwest Arkansas that fit the bill for this type of household and parent and income status. And they were able to run beta tests on their idea because of that. And then the last thing is that they were part of the new venture development class, which gave them access to world-class mentors as well. Okay, so channels, it says list your path to customer, inbound or outbound. And I have an example here of how to get customers, keep them, and then grow them. And this is a sales channel example where you're using social media, articles, like blog posts, newsletters, and you're acquiring customers and getting them into that sales funnel, right? And then you hit them with events and contests and loyalty programs to try to get them to stay a customer, right? All with the goal for them to grow as a customer and continuing to generate revenue for your company and getting them to refer other customers into your sales funnel. So that would be the best kind of lifetime for a customer. Eventually, some of them are going to drop off, and that's called churn or turnover. And that's bound to happen, but you want to keep it at a minimum. UChoose Lunchbox had partnerships with local schools. So as I mentioned, they had those refrigerators that were branded with UChoose Lunchbox, and they would sign a contract with schools and just have access to the school to drop off the lunches. Of course, they had word of mouth between kids and parents. If kids were happy with the food, they would tell their friends would tell their parents, and then of course, hopefully they'll get them into that sales funnel that I just showed you a graphic of. And then of course, social media influencers. So, I think, if any of you are parents out there following Instagram accounts of other parents, I feel like that's a really popular thing right now. So, getting ambassadors for the product would be another good way to market. Key metrics, list the key numbers that tell you how your business is doing. I want to give a word of caution here, especially in the age of social media. And Stacy and I were just talking about this before we got on. When it comes to people liking something, that doesn't necessarily indicate that they're going to buy your product. So if you're putting content out there and you have a lot of followers and they're all, they're engaging with your post with likes, you want to make sure that's not the only thing you're measuring, because it often is not a good indicator of behavior, right? We really want to convert those likes into sales. And if that's not happening, you've got a total breakdown. So try to stay away from those vanity metrics, right? Where you're just counting how many people are following you or liking your posts. Really, we want to count metrics that matter. And the reason why Stacy and I are talking about this is when you put on an event and people say they're interested in going, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to show up, right? Humans are really bad at predicting behavior. So that's something to remember. Key metrics that I think are good to start off with are a customer's lifetime value. So Is it a one and done kind of buy? Will they just buy one product and never come back into your sales funnel? Or do you have things like a subscription that will keep them coming back month to month? Or, you know, are you going to offer them other products that will keep them around? Customer acquisition cost is the amount of marketing that you spend to get one customer to buy your product. And they generally say that your customer's lifetime value should outweigh your acquisition cost 3 to 1. So that's a good kind of benchmark to strive for. Customer retention, how long are people, or how many people are, you know, continuing to come back to your sales funnel, and how many are leaving, which is that last bullet point, the turnover or churn. And then viral reach, again, that's a little bit of a vanity metric, but really seeing how many people are watching the videos that you're putting out and the marketing materials. Good to keep track of, right? You want to grow your base of influence. Okay, cost structure. This one's boring but important because even good ideas run out of money, which I've spoiled this slide as well because that says it at the bottom. But you want to think about how much it's going to cost to develop your product, marketing, of course, distribution, accounting, insurance, legal expenses, and then eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to pay personnel. Although, you know, in the beginning of a startup, sometimes that's difficult. Unless you're fortunate to have financing available. But it's really good to have this stuff on your radar. And I think it's super important to remember that I know this is overwhelming, right? This is everything that a company has in different departments. And you're one person or two people, and you can't wear every hat that's required of a company. So just be mindful of what you bring to the table, right? And what you're going to need help with. And I think that is one of the best things that an entrepreneur can do, to be honest with himself, is to say like, hey, I bring this to the table, but I'm eventually going to need to bring on a co-founder to help me with accounting or help me market my product, because I just don't have those skills. And that's totally okay. And of course you can learn skills, but you probably don't want to take the time to learn all of these, because then you may never launch a company. Okay, last box, and I know I've been going kind of fast because I wanted to leave a little bit of time to ask questions, but it's of course your revenue streams. And you choose as revenue streams was dollar per meal. You can have subscription fees. You can have a hybrid model where you've got several different revenue streams going, but it's going to be a question that investors ask. So just being prepared to answer how you're going to make money, right? There's a lot of good ideas that would be better nonprofits because there's just not a revenue stream. So really think through, is the problem I've identified something that people are willing to pay to solve? Last but not least, once you've built the lean canvas, right? So you've got this living document, you need to go out there and learn, right? And measure what you're learning from customers and go back and revise. So it's kind of just a cycle, right? Of build, measure, learn. And I hope that you will use Lean Startup not only to start a business, but to stay in business, because I think it's an excellent tool, an excellent curriculum to go out and build things that matter. So that's my presentation. And I have time to stay on if you all have questions, or Stacy, I think, is going to share my contact information, so you can always reach out and ask me questions about Lean Startup, or if you want to start your own business and you're interested in the iFund, I'm here to chat about that as well.
You bet. I want to just say, I just put a link in there to a survey just to give us feedback on this presentation in particular. We always do this at the end. We try to get everyone's thoughts just so we can make changes if we need to and tell people they did a good job. So it takes 1 to 3 minutes, not long. Amy is here. Please ask her questions, and I will send a follow-up email with both a Lean Canvas model that you guys can have just in a PDF format, and then her contact information and whatever she sends me from the beginning pitch there. So any questions? Yeah, any questions for Amy?
Okay. What's a good way to transition a Lean Startup or Lean Canvas into a more robust business plan when ready for that? What a great question. So I do think that most investors who have stayed up to date with, especially if you're talking to people who are part of like an angel group or a venture capital firm, they are aware of the lean canvas, and people are starting to move into the direction of understanding that it's all a guess in the beginning, right? Forecasts are always wrong. And they don't want to read a 40-page business plan, but some investors will ask you to write that, right? And the lean canvas can serve as a great outline for that, a great framework. And it can also serve as a great framework for a pitch deck, right? So really taking people through the problem, the solution, your customer segments, and then obviously you've done that TAM, SAM, SOM model. You can revenue project. So it's just a great kind of baseline for all of that. But just recognize that it's all, it's all a guess in the beginning. So before you jump to write a business plan, really understand what the investor actually wants to see, right? If they want a quick download of your business model, I would go with the lean canvas or a pitch deck. But if they really need to see an in-depth analysis, then you have to go with that business plan. But I'd recommend starting small first. And Stacy just put my contact information in the chat. Would love for you all to reach out to me. Thanks for having me. And you guys have a great rest of your evening.